I was just about to knock on my parents' door when I heard my mother's voice, soft but sure. "Don't stress about the debt, honey. We'll have your sister cover it. She never refuses family." The silence that followed was loud. My brother's relieved sigh cut through it like a knife. "Yeah," he said, almost laughing, "she's too loyal for her own good." I stood there, hand inches from the doorframe, pulse steady. I didn't knock. I didn't make a sound. I just turned around, slowly, and walked back down the hall, every step sharpening into resolve. They didn't know I'd already heard enough times in life to stop believing that family always meant loyalty. What they didn't realize was they'd just spent the last of mine. When I was younger, I believed in them, my parents, my brother. We were tight, or so I thought. I was the responsible one, the problem solver. They called me their rock. What they meant was I was the one they could lean on while they took the easy way out. I remember when my brother got his first loan. He promised he'd handle it, that this time he had a solid plan. When it fell apart, he called me in tears. I paid it. Just once, I'd said. My father had patted my shoulder and said, "You've got such a big heart." He meant, "You're easy to use." I didn't notice it at first, how each favor became a habit, how my achievements became the family's comfort blanket, how guilt became their currency. They made me feel that saying no was betrayal. But something inside me shifted that day behind their door. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I opened my banking app, stared at my balance, and felt nothing. Not the usual weight of obligation, just a strange calm. Then I started moving the money. Every penny. Savings, mutual funds, emergency stash. Gone. Transferred into new accounts under a trust name I'd quietly set up months earlier. I'd done it for investment diversification, but maybe a part of me had already sensed this day coming. By morning, my accounts were empty. Publicly, at least. They'd planned to use me. They just didn't realize they'd already lost access. The call came 3 days later. My mother's voice, tight with forced warmth. "Sweetheart, your brother's under some stress. Could you come by tonight?" I almost smiled. "Sure," I said softly. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. My brother looked pale, my father avoided eye contact. They talked about the situation, how the lender was pressuring them, how my brother might lose his car, his apartment. Then came the hook. "We were thinking," my mother began carefully, "maybe you could help us clear this, just until he's back on his feet." The word help stung like poisoned sugar. I leaned back. "How much?" She named a number that would have gutted my savings, if I still had any. I looked around the table. They were waiting for me to say yes. I always did. But I didn't. I just tilted my head. "That's a lot. I wish I could help." Her smile froze. "Wish you could?" "Yes. My finances are complicated right now." Their expressions shifted. Confusion, disbelief, then quiet panic. My brother muttered, "You always find a way." I shrugged. "Not this time." That night, I watched their illusion collapse. Over the next week, they called repeatedly. First polite, then desperate, then angry. "After everything we've done for you," my father shouted once. I almost laughed. "Exactly," I said, and hung up. But revenge wasn't just saying no. That was too easy. I wanted them to feel what they'd made me feel for years. Cornered, used, and disposable. So I went quiet. I let the calls go unanswered. I let the panic simmer. And then I started phase 2. My brother's business was under my name for tax purposes, a temporary fix I'd agreed to a year ago to help his credit. He never bothered reading the documents I'd filed afterward. So legally, I had full right to dissolve the company. And I did, with one digital signature. A polite letter went out to the creditors. The company was closing. Assets frozen, pending review. My brother's accounts were tied to it. Overnight, his access vanished. By the time he realized, it was too late. He called me at midnight, voice trembling. You can't just shut everything down. That's my life." I let him talk, let him choke on every excuse he'd ever thrown at me. When he finally went quiet, I said, "You said I was too loyal for my own good. You were right. I'm fixing that." I hung up. A week later, I visited my parents again. The house felt smaller, quieter. My father's tone was softer now, almost cautious. My mother's eyes were red. "You've changed," she whispered. "No," I said. "I just stopped mistaking silence for love." She looked away. My brother wouldn't even come out of his room. I stood in the doorway, the same one where I'd once overheard them plotting my obedience, and felt something I hadn't in years: peace. People say revenge doesn't heal you. Maybe that's true, but justice does.